Hello, welcome to the third in a series of videos I've made about the Limestone Way in Derbyshire. Soon after moving to Derbyshire, I felt an irresistible desire to walk the full 46 miles, that's 74 kilometres, of this famous footpath. The route is well marked by a logo of a green sheep's head inside a circle. As you can see from the map, this long-distance footpath is surrounded by several big cities. The Limestone Way starts at Castleton and runs almost south through wonderful limestone scenery and small villages right the way to Rocester. Obviously, you'll need a guidebook, which can be ordered from Derbyshire Dales District Council in Matlock. And don't forget to obtain the relevant map known as OL24. So let's start off with a few highlights. I wonder how many of these places you'll be able to recognise. Going from the left to the right, the answers are Monyash, Lathkill Head Cave, Hermit's Cave, the Portway, Winster Market Hall, and the Old Cross at Bonsall. The route from Monyash to Bonsall is 11.5 miles through exceptional scenery and characterful villages. Here are some of the villages along the way. The first section from Monyash to Yulegrave is 5 miles. Right at the heart of Monyash, there is a beautiful pool of water known as Frere Mere. It is said to have been formed about 10,000 years ago when retreating Ice Age glaciers left a few deposits of clay behind which stopped the water from percolating down into the limestone. A nearby horse trough has been turned into a flower garden. Continuing along Rakes Road to a fine old house which may well date back to when Monyash was the headquarters of the London Lead Company owned by Quakers. Here the road turns sharp corner to the right, but instead carry on straight along the track. It soon turns into a narrow path between dry stone walls. No doubt generations of lead miners would have walked this route day after day and in all kinds of weather conditions. A dew pond for livestock comes into view. The footpath narrows down a bit in some places. Here's my friend John Sutcliffe, who's a geologist, and he's pointing along a straight line of shafts where lead has been extracted. Looking back towards Monyash, the ground has clearly been disturbed and the unwanted rock known as deads has been piled up on the surface. A bit further along, turn right and through a gate opposite the National Trust sign. Ferndale is owned and protected by the National Trust. The Limestone Way is well marked and quite often stiles are provided to cross over dry stone walls. It is of course important to use the stiles rather than trying to climb over the walls themselves, which are prone to collapse. Life can be tough enough for upland farmers, and they've got enough to do without having to rebuild their walls. A grassy lane leads down towards One Ash Grange, where a family of cows and their offspring. Also, a bull may be seen wandering around, presumably looking for the cows. A warning sign mentions livestock can be dangerous, so it is very important to keep dogs on a tight lead, especially when there's cows with young calves in the same field. One Ash Grange is now coming into view, and quite a grand affair it is as well. Peacocks are surely a sign of civilization. One Ash Grange was originally a farming outpost of Roche Abbey, settled by the Cistercian monks of Roche Abbey in 1147. According to tradition, monks who had misbehaved were sent here. And in 1700, the Bowman family were granted a license to hold Quaker meetings. To the left at this point is a rare example of traditional stone pigsties. Beside the path is a small building believed to have been used by the monks as a cold store. Interesting to see how it's still retaining its religious heritage. Some figures inside the coal store bear witness to Christmas and God's mission of sending a saviour into the world. Just beyond the Limestone Way passes alongside a barn and down a flight of steps. Here the farmer has laid a string to guide walkers around the edge of the field. The farmer's message is clearly stated, although scratch marks indicate an angry response. However, my own sympathy is with the farmer. Continuing down the shallow valley to a gate with the short mine level over on the right. From here, the footpath descends very steeply into Caelsdale. The footpath runs alongside a neat little limestone crag. Surely there's just got to be some undiscovered caves around here. At the bottom of Caelsdale, the Limestone Way strikes up a steep stairway. However, in my opinion, the path into Lathgildale is well worth exploring. This diversion is to an impressive cave entrance about 20 minutes walk away. Lathgill Head Cave is nearly a mile long and has a vertical range of 180 feet. The system can be accessed via the Garden Path entrance and the Ricklow Cave, which are both situated higher up the valley. Most of the cave involves flat-out crawling in a low bedding plane. But remember, this is a serious undertaking. Furthermore, almost the whole cave system floods to the roof in wet weather. In summer, however, the stream is said to drain into the nearby Magpie Sough. Returning now to Caelsdale, the steps seem to go on forever and can be quite a challenge on a hot day. By looking carefully towards the top of the steps, you may find some fossils. These were laid down nearly 350 million years ago in Carboniferous limestone. The little cylindrical shapes are known as crinoids or sea lilies. The top of the steps is a good place for a snack or a picnic with fine views out across Lathgildale. An interpretation board nearby shows the valley between Monyash and Overhaddon. Many visitors regard this as one of the most beautiful and secluded valleys in the whole of the Peak District. Certainly worth a day out in its own right, all the way down to Allport. This is the view to the northwest, with Haddon Grove Farm to the right. Continuing along the Limestone Way, we reach a viewpoint when glancing back towards One Ash Grange. The footpath skirts the edge of Lowmore Wood. By the way, this woodland is quite special. It was purchased in 2001 to mark the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Peak District as Britain's first national park. Then through a field to a stile and diagonally to the right across to the next field and another stile. Then bear left to the road and cross diagonally onto Moor Lane. Follow the lane past woodland on your right. Here the ground is disturbed, probably a remnant of lead mining, and soon you'll have fantastic views out towards Yulegrave. At the car park, keep on the footpath and descend to another road. Turn left, then immediately right over a stile at the road between Yulegrave and Middleton. Turn right then towards Middleton. About 5 minutes later at a sharp bend, go through the gap in the stone wall and descend into Bradforddale. Margaret and I were there in late spring when bluebells were in blossom. Turn left and pass by some slabs bearing various inscriptions like a rather fragmented poem. The Limestone Way follows alongside the River Bradford. There are a series of small dams and static pools that were built to encourage the breeding of trout. You may also spot the odd mandarin duck. This is a good habitat for nesting birds with beds of watercress, reeds, rushes and kingcups, making a habitat for nesting birds, including the elusive kingfisher. After about half a mile, there's a real treat for devotees of wild swimming, as shown by the red circle. The river banking has been cut away and deepened. This is a great place for wild swimming, although, as you might expect, there are some rules to be followed. Newgrave sits above Bradford Dale. This is one of the most interesting villages that I know of, with old houses, a large parish church, pubs and shops. There are several ways of getting up there. For example, instead of walking down the side of the river, stay on the north side, following a narrow footpath that gets a bit steeper towards the main road. In late spring, many variants of the bluebell can be found here. Alternatively, at the next red circle shown here on the map, go over a bridge made of huge stone slabs and reach the opposite side of the river, then go steeply up into the heart of the village next to a youth hostel. As I say, Newgrave is quite a fascinating place, and near the centre you'll come across the Old Hall, which is probably the original manor house. Rumour has it that Oliver Cromwell stayed at the Old Hall and looked out through the window upstairs to the west wing. He was checking for the approach of cavaliers from Allport. There are said to be tunnels from the house going north to Old Hall Farm and south to the River Bradford. The parish church dates from around 1150 AD, but there was probably an earlier Saxon church on the same site. The oldest surviving parts of the church are to be found in the nave, with typically thick Norman pillars and chamfered arches. The painted east window, which you can see here, was by the celebrated pre-Raphaelite artist Edward Burne-Jones and produced in the workshops of the famous William Morris. These decorative tiles are reputed to have been designed by William Morris himself. They were fitted during the restoration of the church in 1870s. The tiles were then covered up by oak panelling until rediscovered in the 1960s. Why not have a break to enjoy the peace and beauty of this ancient parish church? Spot the carvings and their historical significance. From the parish church, head downhill into Bradford Dale and pick up the Limestone Way near the swimming pool that I was telling you about. By the way, this is the best book I've come across. It's called A River in Time by Christine Gregory and was published in 2013. Christine's book is a written and photographic celebration of the River Bradford, the landscape and the local communities. Incidentally, the author must have spent hundreds of hours painstakingly researching the history of the area and, in particular, lead mining. Her book offers some amazing insights. One of the most intriguing stories happened in 1882 when the River Bradford disappeared down a mine shaft. The hole was said to be as big as a house. The story goes that a man from Baslow visited this spectacle, but his dog got swept down into the hole and ended up floating along Hillcar drainage stuff. 3 weeks later, the dog's remains appeared several miles away at Darley Dale. So here's another very basic map as we are now leaving Newgrave and heading towards Winster. It's a distance of 4 miles. Need the same guidebook and Ordnance Survey map. Beyond the wild swimming pool, you'll soon reach some cottages at the roadside and another stone slab. This is a view of the river looking upstream. The River Bradford joins the River Lathkildale at Allport and runs east to merge with the River Wye. However, the Limestone Way comes across the bridge along the road for 50 yards, heading towards the village of Elton. Then you need to get over a stile on the left-hand side. As you can see, the weather that day was absolutely superb. Follow the path through another gate. head diagonally across a field. The track by now is becoming quite a bit steeper. Bleakley Dyke has the remains of a stile, but it's been left isolated in the middle of open fields. You might like to turn round and enjoy the view. The bell tower of Yulgrave Parish Church is there, just off left of centre. Somewhere in the centre, you'll see a blue lake formed by Bleakley Dyke, which was built at the Hollow Farm. This is the site of the infamous Morstan Mine, which was the scene of a terrible accident on the 23rd of May, 1932. An underground gas explosion directly killed 5 miners working on a ventilation fan. A 6th miner managed to reach the surface and raise the alarm. 3 rescuers died from carbon monoxide poisoning. Among the dead were, sadly, a father and son, although it is still providing a water supply for the village of Yulgrave. So from here, follow the waymarked path over a stile on the left. Then, just before the gate, double back to the left and into the wood. At the time of our visit, tree felling was underway and warning notices were around. At the other side of the woods, this tractor and trailer could be seen from the road. They were both fitted with tank tracks suitable for steep and muddy sections deep inside the woods where the trees were being felled. Robin Hood Stride is only 1/4 of a mile away. First, though, head across the fields to the 9 Stones Close, also known as Grey Ladies. This stone circle is believed to have been built between 3300 and 900 BC and was once 45 feet across. However, by 1847, there were 7 stones recorded as part of the circle, but today only 4 remain. An ancient tract called the Portway once passed close by. The Derbyshire Portway, also known as Old Manchester Lane or the Chariot Way, is a prehistoric trackway that runs for over 40 miles. It was probably used in Roman times and right down to the 18th century. The Portway in ancient British language is the name for a military route. The most famous section is between Mamtor near Castleton and Wirksworth. I like the way that Mike Creswell, the author of this book, has envisaged different generations walking along together. Returning to the road, then walk uphill. Take the path opposite the Harthill Moor Farm Drive to reach Robin Hood Stride. At midsummer, the major southern moon can be seen setting between the 2 boulders. And since the profile looks a bit like chimney stacks, these rocks are known as Mock Beggar's Hall. For an interesting and short diversion, climb up the steps and over the stile. The surrounding area contains traces of barrows, bronze or Iron Age enclosures and hut circles. Alternatively, walk a bit further on to find a welcoming sun trap and a gate that reaches the same place as by going up those steps. The footpaths lead off for 200 yards, then over a wall. The route descends quite steeply onto a path that reaches the Hermit's Cave near the base of the cliff. There, behind these protective bars, is a 4-foot-high, crudely carved crucifixion on the wall and a niche for a lamp or candle by its side, probably dating from the 14th century. In 1845, Bateman recorded in his Vestiges that he had found a coin of the Emperor Tertius near the Crackcliffe Hermitage. Back at the bench in the sun trap, go through a gate and onto a gently descending track. Looking back and over to the right, Crackcliffe Crag comes into view. Down at the bottom of the hill, go across a cattle grid and a gate at a farm drive. Go straight up to the junction, then cross the road. Nearby, an old lead mine is named after the ancient prehistoric Portway. On a bright, sunny day, even fireweed can look attractive. The beautiful landscape in front of you has been shaped by rainfall, rivers and underground streams. According to geologists, some 350 million years ago, this area was covered in a tropical sea. 3 layers of rock were laid down. Limestone is the oldest, then shale, which is a soft rock, mostly washed away later by meltwater from glaciers, and sitting right on top is millstone grit, such as can be seen at Cliff Crag. Rainwater has trickled down and emerges as springs where the limestone meets the shale. Later, the limestone bulged upwards and the 2 top layers were gradually eroded away. Continue on a track for just over half a mile. Along the way, look out for some old buildings on the next hillside, as shown inside a red circle. This 30-foot high wall is all that remains of the engine house at Old Mill Close Mine. After the 1870s, new Mill Close Mine was opened about 1,500 feet northeast of here. It became the largest lead mine in Britain, eventually closing in 1940. Mill Close Mine went down to nearly 1,000 feet depth and yielded well over 500,000 tons of lead ore and almost 100,000 tons of zinc. Look out for a stile at the crossroads with a farm drive. A detour into Winster is highly recommended. This former lead mining town once had twice the current population. By the way, a direct route into Winster is indicated across the fields shown here by the red circle. In 1821, the village of Winster hosted one of the last formal pistol fights in England. By then, duels like this had been illegal for over a century. By way of background, a dispute had broken out between William Brittlebank and the local doctor, William Cuddy, over Brittlebank's sister, which led to Cuddy being shot. He'd been a naval doctor, but the young Brittlebank insulted him as nothing more than a herbalist. The duel took place on the 22nd of May, 1821, in a lawn just above the churchyard. Cuddy died the next day. Winster Market House is believed to have been built during the 16th century. Originally, the whole of the ground floor was open, with the upper story supported by 5 arches. These arches were probably filled in during the decline of the market between 1795 and 1855. In 1906, the building was bought by the National Trust for merely £50. So far, the Limestone Way has reached Winster, and now we come to the final section into Bonsall. It's about 3 miles. You'll need the same guidebook and Ordnance Survey map. So now going back to Winster Bank Top. Continue straight along. The Miners' Standard was built as a farmhouse in 1653. It became an inn when the Parker family moved away around 1753. By 1764, Winster was a prosperous market town with 18 inns and taverns. The Miners' Standard is named after the dish used for the measurement of lead ore. As lead mining declined, the number of pubs decreased, and now the only other pub is the Bowling Green, down in the centre of the village. Go south along the main road, bringing you to a low flat-roofed building. This is in fact the famous Winster Ore House, where lead ore was once stored, just like having a modern night safe at a bank. The building has a vaulted roof for security, and there's a chute at the back for depositing the lead ore at any time. Lead is often found with barytes, fluorite and calcite. There's an interpretation board at the front, which has an illustration of the lead miner's measuring dish, which is kept at the Worksworth Moot Hall. Cross over at the ore house and follow a broad walled track opposite. Please note the ban on mountain bikes. This next section has half a dozen double stiles, which are almost impossible to carry a bike through or over. This bench provides a comfortable resting place with great views back to the west. and across the valley to the east. Continue for 800 yards to the end of the track. Then through a stile, past a dew pond, much needed for livestock in these barren limestone uplands. Then bear left downhill to reach a wooden signpost pointing Limestone Way. Yet another stile. Actually, hereabouts, there is a different marker. The Peak Wensley Trail goes from Matlock via Castleton to finish at Edale. This route has some similarities with the Limestone Way, although it's really more of a pilgrimage to historic places associated with the Methodist Church. Follow the path, skirting below Lunter Rocks, and go up again to reach one of the most formidable double stiles in the whole of the Limestone Way. The walled path leads onto a series of narrow fields. At the last field, which is much bigger, bear diagonally right to reach Bonsall Lane. Turn left along the road for a few yards, then take a stile on the right, diagonally across the fields until you reach Blakelow Lane. Head diagonally left through stiles to reach Moorlands Lane. The Limestone Way enters Bonsall at the top of the hill. Look out for an interpretation board for what must be one of the most characterful villages in Derbyshire. Here's an old well next to a bus stop, although I expect they are few and far between. Bell Lane leads on to Stepping Lane. How about this for a grand descent into the heart of the village? Bonsall Well Dressing Carnival takes place towards the end of July each year. Bonsall Market Cross is a prominent feature and is believed to date back to the medieval period around 14th or 15th century. The green man depicted here in flower petals is a legendary figure that is believed to be a symbol of new birth, representing the cycle of new growth that happens every spring. He is most often depicted in a sculpture or an image of a face, which is composed of leaves. Despite originating as a pagan figure, the green man often appears carved in wood or stone in places of Christian worship. The Romans were the first to recognise the Peak District as an important base for lead mining. During the busiest period from 1600 to 1800, Derbyshire had more than 25,000 mine shafts. Here is a replica of an 800-year-old carving at St Mary's Parish Church in Wirksworth. The miner, known as Toad Man, is carrying his pick and kibble, which is a metal bucket. The parish church of St James the Apostle is well worth a visit. It was once cluttered with internal partitions until removed by the Victorians. Here's another well dressing from 2024 with doves and a rainbow from Noah's Ark representing God's gift of peace. Well, at last we've arrived at a fine-looking fountain close to the playing fields, just in case you've still got any surplus energy. So at this point, we're about halfway through the Limestone Way as a route overall, and the next little video is going to be about going over the top of the hill down into Matlock and back again. Matlock's quite a good place to be for overnight accommodation. Thanks for watching.